right, let's dive into something pretty cool today, a summer job reservation system. We're talking PHP, XOPS, and a whole bunch of code. Our listener wants to build a module for this, and it's not a simple task.
Yeah, the system's got to be robust, handle everything from student registrations to worksite management to, that dreaded waiting list.
Right, and all while being user-friendly, both for the students and the people running the show.
Exactly. Got to keep everyone happy.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us a quick overview of XOPS, just for those who might not be familiar?
Sure, XOPS is an open source content management system, kind of like the engine behind a website. It's written in PHP, uses a MySQL database.
Okay, so our listeners are essentially building a custom module that plugs right into this XOPS framework.
That's the idea.
Gotcha. So students will need to register, input their information. What kind of data we're talking about?
We'll need the basics, of course. Name, contact info, maybe date of birth. The real challenge is preventing duplicate registrations.
Yeah, that's a headache nobody wants, especially the administrators. So once a student's registered, they need to see the available jobs. How's the system going to handle that?
That's where the worksite management comes in. System needs to track all the work sites, categorize them, show how many job slots are available at each one.
So like a dynamic job board, constantly updating as students pick their spots.
Precisely.
But what happens when a worksite fills up? That's when the waiting list comes into play, right?
Yep, the system's got to be smart. Track the number of jobs filled, and when a worksite hits capacity, boom, it gets flagged as inactive.
So students can't select it anymore. But what about the students already on the waiting list? Do they get bumped up automatically?
That's where it gets interesting. The source material doesn't specify that part. Looks like it's left open for customization.
Ah, so our listener gets to be the decision maker. What factors should they consider when designing this part?
Fairness is key, definitely. Could stick with a first-come, first-served approach based on when they join the waiting list. But they could also get creative.
Ooh, I like where this is going. What kind of creative factors?
They could implement a ranking system based on GPA, relevant skills, maybe even interview performance.
Oh, like a mini competition within the waiting list. Students would be motivated to stand out.
Exactly. Gives the work sites a better pool of candidates, too. Now, speaking of managing those waiting lists, the source material mentions a setting for administrators to limit how many waiting lists a student can join.
That's interesting. Seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Wouldn't you want to give students as many chances as possible?
Not necessarily. You got to think about it from both sides. If student joins every waiting list, they might not be truly committed to any opportunity, and for administrators, it just creates a lot of noise.
You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. So limiting the waiting list actually makes them focus on the jobs they really want.
Precisely. Streamlines the process, makes it more efficient.
Now, what if a student picks a work site, then changes their mind? How does the system handle that?
It allows for changes, but there's a confirmation step to prevent any accidental changes.
Smart move. Can't have students switching work sites accidentally.
Exactly. Adds a layer of protection.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Talk about reporting. Crucial for administrators to see the big picture.
Right. The module needs to generate reports. Group students into two categories, those with a work site and those without.
Simple but effective. Helps track progress and see who needs extra help.
Absolutely.
Okay, now for the big one. Salesforce integration.
Ah, yes, that's where it gets technical.
Salesforce is a powerful CRM tool, but how does it fit into this system?
We need to be able to export the student data from XOEPS in a format that Salesforce can understand. It's all about leveraging existing infrastructure.
So it's not just a standalone module. It's about integrating it into a larger ecosystem.
Exactly.
That's powerful. And speaking of seamless integration, what about email notifications?
Oh, those are crucial. We'll need notifications for confirming registrations, alerting students about changes on the waiting lists, informing administrators when a work site is full,
Like a digital assistant keeping everyone in the loop.
and reducing those frantic phone calls.
Okay, so we've covered the core features, but there's a bunch of additional requirements in the source material too. These seem more about robustness and user-friendliness.
Right. Let's start with security. That's paramount. We'll need secure logins, password recovery.
What about CAPTCHA? And strong password policies.
Those are great points. Definitely need those. And for user-friendliness, there's profile management. Students should be able to update their info, view their status.
Giving them control over their data, empowering them.
Exactly. And search and filtering is essential. Students can search work sites by neighborhood, for example. Administrators can filter and search student registrations.
All about making it intuitive and easy to use. Now, what about keeping track of all the changes happening? That seems like it could get confusing.
You're right, that's where an audit trail comes in.
Yeah.
System needs to log all changes made by students and administrators, accountability and transparency.
So you can trace back any issues. Now let's talk about accessibility. The source material mentions making it accessible to a wider audience.
Localization is key for that, supporting multiple languages.
So it's not just functionality, but inclusivity as well.
And we can't forget about mobile responsiveness these days. The module needs to work on all devices.
Smartphones, tablets, desktops, everything.
Exactly, no matter where you are.
There's also accessibility for users with disabilities.
Right, we need to follow accessibility guidelines in the design, make sure everyone can use it without barriers.
So we've covered security, profile management, search and filtering, an audit trail, localization, mobile responsiveness, accessibility. What about data handling? We talked about Salesforce, but are there other import-export options?
Yes, flexibility is important there. The module should allow for various formats like CSV and Excel.
So administrators can work with the data outside XOPS.
Exactly.
Now, what about keeping users informed about updates?
A notification center within the module would be great. A central hub for updates and announcements.
Like a personalized newsfeed for summer job info.
Precisely. And that brings us to the end of the requirements for this system.
Wow, that was a lot. But we're just getting started.
In part 2, we'll look at some of the technical details.
Get into the nitty-gritty.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned, folks. Okay, so we've talked about the overall structure of this system, but now I'm really curious to see how some of these features actually work.
Yeah, let's get into the details.
Like that worksite capacity thing. How does it actually keep track in real time? Prevent things from going over the limit.
So each worksite has this current capacity counter. Every time a student picks that worksite, the counter goes up by 1.
Like a live occupancy tracker. Cool.
And when it hits the max, the system marks it as inactive.
So nobody else can apply.
Got it.
But what about the waiting list? We said the promotion logic is customizable, but how is the waiting list itself structured?
The developers provided a good framework for that. Database structure for storing the applicants, logic for sorting them, probably by date and time, and even the ability to set limits on how many lists a student can join.
So our listener has all the pieces, like a prefab waiting room ready for customization.
Oh.
Now, about that Salesforce integration, you mentioned it can get technical. What are the challenges? I'm guessing it's not just copy-pasting data.
You're right, it's more about mapping the data from the XOPS module to the correct fields in Salesforce.
Like translating between two languages.
Exactly.
And the source material mentions a class called Salesforce Export. Is that where the magic happens?
Yep. That class takes the student data
Why?
and transforms it into a format Salesforce can use.
So smooth data transfer.
Right.
This module manages the process and ensures data can flow into other systems. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's key for organizations using Salesforce.
They can incorporate this summer job data without any issues. Okay, so we've seen capacity, waiting list, Salesforce. What about when things go wrong? Software isn't perfect. How does it handle errors?
Good point. Error handling is crucial. The source material mentions using try-catch blocks in the code.
Try-catch, what are those?
Think of it as a safety net. Try is the code you expect to run smoothly. But if there's a problem, catch kicks in and handles the error.
So the whole system doesn't crash.
Right. It prevents minor issues from becoming big problems. And speaking of things that are important, we need to talk about documentation.
Oh, documentation. The developer's best friend.
Haha. Yeah, but good documentation is crucial. Imagine trying to understand someone else's code without any explanation.
Like assembling furniture with no instructions.
Exactly. And the source material emphasizes clear comments in the code, plus comprehensive documentation for installation and usage.
So it's not just writing code, it's making it understandable.
Makes it accessible to other developers, which is important.
Like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the technical elements. Now I'm ready for those what-if possibilities.
You mean those innovative features? That could take this system to the next level.
Exactly. Let's get creative.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we've covered the technical stuff. Now let's brainstorm some what-if possibilities. Those innovative features that could really enhance this system.
Yeah, let's have some fun with it.
We talked about the waiting list and how the promotion logic is customizable. What if we went a step further and introduced a ranking system?
Instead of just first come, first served, we could prioritize certain students based on certain criteria.
Right, like GPAs, skills, maybe even interview performance.
Exactly. It would incentivize students to really shine.
Gamifying the waiting list, I like it.
And it gives work sites a better pool of candidates.
It's a win-win. What other ideas do you have?
How about worksite reviews, like Yelp, but for summer jobs?
Oh, that's a great idea. Students could rate their experiences, provide feedback.
It adds transparency and accountability.
Work sites would be motivated to create positive experiences, and students get a more realistic view of what to expect. This next one might be a bit out there, but what about adding some social networking features,
Interesting. Tell me more.
like a forum or chat feature, where students could connect, share tips, maybe even organize meetups?
It would create a sense of community.
Exactly. It's not just about finding a job. It's about building a network.
Right. That's a powerful concept. And speaking of powerful, what about that recommendation engine we mentioned?
The one that suggests work sites based on interests and skills.
It could match students with opportunities they hadn't even considered.
Take the guesswork out of the process,
And for administrators, it optimizes worksite allocation.
so everyone benefits.
Exactly. Technology empowering individuals and creating a more efficient job market.
Well, there you have it. A deep dive into a summer job reservation system. Not just practical, but with the potential for innovation and positive change.
It's amazing what you can do with some code and a little creativity.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will take these ideas even further. Until next time, happy coding, everyone.